Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Cannell, and welcome back once again to another edition of the Movie Battleground. And this is a bit of a different edition of the Movie Battleground. So for tonight, you guys are going to be seeing something a little different because partway through the show, we're all going to have costume changes. And what that means is you are watching a match that was recorded in two parts. Tonight's matchup, of course, is John Maher versus Jordan Owens. There isn't going to be any kind of introduction interview just because, well, the interview that we originally recorded was very much based on the jokes that we were making beforehand. So I just feel like it'd be weird to just sort of edit it in and leave it sitting there without any of the context around it. It's a fun recording. But with that said, this matchup, of course, comes off the back of John's unfortunate loss to myself. For anyone keeping track, it has only been 2 weeks since that match was uploaded. That's how quickly the man wanted another opportunity, or maybe it is scheduling and editing, probably the latter. With that said, though, John lost his match to me, which unfortunately means he does lose out on his number one contenders matchup possibility. However, he did want the chance to get back in there, especially ahead of a potential slot in the upcoming tournament. And so Jordan Owens is who is stepping up to take him on in a matchup that has been really, really, first off, one I'm looking forward to, and secondly, was really, really good. I'm speaking very vaguely, to sort of beat around the bush here and get to it. We had started recording this match originally. And part of the way through, I was unfortunately called away because of an emergency. My mom's car broke down on the side of the road, and my dad works long hours. He works probably 45 minutes away from our house. So it wasn't a case of he could just leave work where he was still at to go help her. I was the closest one, so unfortunately I had to go. Thankfully, all the competitors and all the judges involved in that match were really, really great about doing so. But it left the match in a really weird place because very rarely have we ever had to end a match mid-recording. I can't think of the last time that it's happened. I believe it has before, but I can't think of the last time that it happened. And so I was talking with the competitors, and we were trying to decide what we wanted to do. And so despite the fact that one of these competitors did actually have a 2-0 lead in that original matchup, they came to the decision that they were going to vacate the scores and instead allow the new set of judges that would have to come in for the second part of the recording judge the entire match, because it would be for the sake of consistency. They wanted whoever would be the win the match to win the match off the opinions of the people judging. And despite the fact that we've had to change out, it's 3 different judges from the 3 judges who were here last time. They felt that they would rather have these 3 judges judge the entire match for the sake of the consistency and opinion instead of 2 judges and 2 judges. So that is what we're going with. I have 3 judges backstage in the form of Jake, Alejandro, and Noah. So what they're going to be doing for the first part of this match is judging the recorded segments that I've edited out of the original recording to play for them. And then at about probably the halfway mark of this match, which is generally where we're at, we'll bring the competitors in and they will go from there live debating the remaining 2 questions. So with that said, I'm not going to kill any more time. We're going to go ahead and jump into the questions because I don't have competitors to talk to and time to kill. So with that said, judges, we'll go ahead and get ready backstage as I'll introduce the question for you guys. And this first question, I don't have the banners ready for it here, so I'll just say it out loud. You'll see the banners on the actual match. Was a viewer-submitted question that was sent to us by Madi or Raymond. And it's a question which its wording is very, very specific. There's a specific wording to the question that I think really makes for an interesting debate, depending on how you analyze said word. And it's also a really great question that I was waiting for a matchup where I felt we had 2 people who could really have some fun with this idea, and I think we got it in these 2. So the question is, who is the most inept villain of all time? Now, again, you can analyze that a couple different ways, but that is the question. Who is the most inept villain of all time? As I'm going to go ahead and pull in the video to the stream for you guys to watch their debate. There it is. So I'm going to go ahead and disappear off screen. Okay. All right, we'll do that instead. That works beautifully. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and disappear from the screen. Judges backstage, I hope you guys are ready. People at home, I hope you guys are ready. I know this is a really weird intro for a video, but with that said, here is round number 1 between John Maher and Jordan Owens.
Man, it's in the question, the most inept villain of all time. When you think of inept, you think of maybe words like bumbling and stupidity. So I went with Harry and Marv from Home Alone. Yes, the wet bandits. I mean, from the get-go, these two guys who, you got Pesci, who you've seen kill people in other movies here. You got Daniel Stern, who's doing his best badass impersonation. But they are inept from the beginning. They're getting outfooled, outdone by like this 8-year-old kid. They're confused by cardboard cutouts here. They're constantly hurting themselves. They're constantly making the wrong move. But it is the most fun to have, and they're the most inept villains that I've ever seen on screen here. They from the get-go here, they are making every wrong move that you possibly can make from all around the way. Harry and Marv from the Home Alone series, or particularly the first one, are just the most inept villains I think we've ever seen in cinema history. Thank you. This has been JPO.
It has been. I can confirm that. John, back over to you. You have 1 minute on the clock when ready.
I feel the most important thing in this debate is really, we're going to sit here, we're going to define what does inept mean. If somebody's just stupid from the get-go, are they really inept? I really don't know. But really, when I think of inept, I'm going to pick probably like a higher tier villain. I'm picking a Bond villain, somebody in the pantheon of all the Bond villains. Alex Trevelyan from GoldenEye is probably the most inept villain, just top to bottom. His plan, first of all, sucks. And I'll get into that, how his plan doesn't even make any sense in my expansion. I'll get into the fact that he chose henchmen that are horrible. All 3 of his main henchmen are horrible at their jobs. And in GoldenEye, I would say on average, there's definitely more scenes where they just don't ever kill James Bond. I know villains not killing James Bond is kind of part of the trope of a Bond movie, but in GoldenEye, it really goes overboard to the point that it really is overkill. Alex Trevelyan doesn't kill Bond at least 5 times, and also leaves the devices to destroy his plan out in plain view. I will expand on that in my 2 minutes. And I've been John William Maher. Thank you very much.
Whoa. I didn't know that was your middle name.
All right. I'm expecting social security numbers by the end of this matchup, boys. Jordan, back over to you. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Inept means having just the worst plan from the get-go here. And Harry and Marv, while their plan is good, it is executed just ineptly. Hey, that's that word again. From the get-go here. Trying to sneak in, never looking at the floor, never knowing, even though they know he's got booby traps set up, they're constantly falling into it one after another here. When they have him, kind of like, he said with his villain, they never really execute what they're going to do with him correctly here. I think one of the problems with your villain here is there's a little bit, you got kind of some of the tropes that you see from 007 where it's, he might let him go or he has bad henchmen. First of all, you can't choose your henchmen. I really doubt that there was a long picking process. Sometimes you just got to pick whoever's around. And again, he's got kind of a cool introduction scene, fakes his death. You see a little bit of badassery at the beginning here, and also the end scene at the end shows that he's capable as well here. At no point in my movie do you really see much capableness. I mean, they could move on and they could really start to pick it together what this kid was doing. It's 2 steps ahead. There's 2 of them, but they keep falling into the traps. They keep falling into what he's got set up for them. Again, he's like 8 years old and he's outsmarting them. Alec at least has moments where he is ahead. He is he's ahead of even James Bond here, and he's able to decipher things, and then luckily James Bond's able to counter out of it, which is what James Bond does. He's able to outsmart even when he's been outsmarted. So there's moments of showing that Alec does kind of know what he's doing here. It's a cool little twist at first, and showing that maybe with better henchmen, he could have done a better job. Maybe with a couple smarter things, he could have done better. But he's still pretty decent. While Harry and Marv were just simply there to rob. They even lose that focus at some point here. They really could just still steal and get the hell out of there. But no, they let the anger get to them and makes it even worse.
All right, that is time. John, back over to you. 2 minutes on the clock.
I think JPO actually hit on a couple of things I was going to say, so thanks for saying it for me. Yeah, Harry and Marv aren't necessarily inept villains. Their plan works perfectly every single time until they try to go into a house that somebody's actually in. The Wet Bandits' whole scheme is they're casing a rich neighborhood where people are going on vacation, and they're breaking into empty houses and robbing them. It's only when they divert from their own plan, which was working perfectly up until that point, not inept, and they actually go into a house that a kid lives in, that their plan totally falls apart. And yes, they could have run away or just stolen things at any point in time, but they get angry and greedy and prideful that an 8-year-old is going to taking advantage of them. Again, not inept. They just kind of fall victim to getting angry. And actually, they do get the upper hand on Kevin McAllister. And Kevin McAllister only wins because there's a Deus Ex Machina moment when Marley beats the shit out of Alex and Marv with a shovel. They were going to win. Whereas Trevelyan, let's go through the litany of things he does wrong. Let's go through his 3 henchmen, first of all. Boris, the expert computer hacker, whose password is a 5-letter word, all capital letters. That's horrible bullshit. Xenia Onatop, the Russian secret agent who will attack somebody with a gun strapped to her back, but chooses to kill them with her thighs. And then General Oramov, who actually gives James Bond his gun back before trying to frame him for a murder. And then on top of it all, Trevelyan's plan is he's going to use the GoldenEye satellite to shoot London to wipe out all of the financial records of London after he's transferred all the money out of London. Therefore, if he destroys all the banking network, destroys all the financial records, he ruins the value of the currency he's stealing. So essentially, he is going to electromagnetic pulse a city and wipe out something to gain absolutely nothing. So this guy fakes his own death, becomes Janus, spends 9 years building up a criminal syndicate to not kill James Bond 5 times and hatch this ultimate criminal plan to steal a Soviet electromagnetic satellite to gain $0. And then at the end, he knocks James down the thing, and he could easily just close the hatch and restart the machine. He jumps down after him, and ultimately that's how he gets killed.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. You guys know how this works. Try not to talk over each other too much. Let each other speak from time to time. That said, it starts back up when the first person speaks.
I love how you say they're really good and their plan works, except for this one time. Oh, God forbid they had ran into 2 8-year-olds, or if they had ran into an actual 40-year-old person that had brains. No, yeah, okay, cool. They can rob a house when it's empty, but now that there's actually one little kid standing in their way, their plan completely falls apart.
Their plan was to rob empty houses. Their plan was to rob empty houses. That's why he disguised himself as a cop. That's why they know all the time.
Adapt, and obviously they can't even adapt to one 8-year-old.
It's not that they didn't adapt. It's that that was never their plan. They had no plan to go into occupied houses. If they had just kept robbing empty houses, they would have never been caught.
Right, and that's why they're inept, because now as soon as there's one little obstacle in their way, instead of A, changing their plan, or B, moving on, no, they get caught into the greediness, and they want to take down this kid for some reason.
Anybody who has 30 successes in one, so Ted Bundy, I guess, was an inept serial killer because he killed 30 people.
In this case, they're absolutely inept.
He eventually got caught. No.
In this case, they're absolutely inept. It's one case.
Whatever your crime is, you can be good at it. When you eventually get caught, you don't become inept. They had a ton of successes. And in fact, you could tell at the end when the police are like, oh, now we know you hit all these houses. That means they successfully hit a number
and it also showed that they were easily caught and identified to those other houses. If they were good at their job, they wouldn't have been able to trace them back to those other houses. But they're so dumb because they want to be the wet bandits. They leave traces behind. They're inept, even in their old crimes. Because guess what? Now instead of being in trouble for one crime, you're in trouble for a bunch now. That's inept.
Only because they went into an occupied house. There's plenty of people who leave calling cards and never get caught. I mean, it doesn't make sense.
And they're inept too. Then 2 wrongs,
but never get caught. If they had just stuck to their plan and not gone into an occupied house, which isn't inept. It's just.
But they didn't stick to their plan.
They thought exactly. That's not inept. That's just like, we could do this.
That is.
It's just a kid. We can do this.
As soon as shit started going wrong, they should have said, "Let's get the fuck out of here and go to an empty house down the street or another empty house."
I think the reaction is totally normal. If I'm a 40, 50-year-old man and some 8-year-old kid is beating the shit out of me, I'm gonna want to get my heat back,
Then guess what, John? You're inept. The two wrongs don't make it right.
I think I can handle that kid. You know, and honestly, like I said,
and Alec at some points is at least able to handle James Bond. He lets his shit get to him, just like you just said with his heat. Alec wanted to get his heat back. Is it dumb a little bit? Yeah, but at least he's able to. He kind of evens out James Bond on several occasions, while Harry and Marv are always behind. The biggest thing
Alex Trevelyan does that I didn't even touch on is like there's the whole scene like when they recapture Bond and Natalia, and Boris basically they have 17 minutes, and Boris is like, I can crack this code, and Boris winds up cracking the code, and they screw it up anyway. They let Bond.
They nominate Boris. You're putting a lot of shit on Alec. That's just
Alec could have shot Boris. Alec had them at gunpoint. He didn't shoot them. If he had faith in Boris, who is the best computer hacker in the world, and the guy had 17 minutes. Code,
putting your faith in the wrong person is just like me and my exes. It doesn't make you an ass. It just maybe means
he's his guy. He chose him. That's his guy. Like that is his guy. He selected him to survive the initial GoldenEye like theft. Like that.
And he does show good hacking skills. And then until they're able to be outsmarted here.
But he eventually succeeds. Like Trevelyan doesn't even trust his own people to succeed. Like he succeeds with 2 minutes left. Trevelyan didn't even have to go on the wild goose chase against Bond because Boris unhacks the computer in time.
Well, there's no movie there. No? I mean, of course you're gonna have a final showdown.
Exactly. With he made a bad. I mean, of course James Bond isn't gonna die. No one's. We don't except in the last movie, I guess. But
what do you mean? He has died. Fact check.
I expect Trevelyan to put up a better fight, like Goldfinger or Largo or all these other better villains that came before.
Good enough fight. They're pretty even until that last like.
The hand-to-hand combat. No one's saying Trevelyan can't fight. I'm saying his whole plan is dark.
Then he's not very inept. These two never have the upper hand except for a second.
And time. Again. All right, we're gonna go into the 1 minute closings. We're going to go back to you, Jordan. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Harry and Marv are two grown-ass men who have a plan, and so far it has kind of worked. Now an 8-year-old stands in their way. What are we gonna do? They are out-tricked, they are outsmarted multiple times, sometimes in the same way here, and these two grown-ass men don't divert. And now instead of showing their inept, now instead of at the end when they get caught, it's not just for one crime, it's for multiple crimes here. Alec does outsmart James Bond on several occasions here, from faking his death to the end to picking the guys. Maybe he picked some of the wrong guys, I guess. I don't know. I think Boris actually might have been a better nomination than Alec. Because I think Alec, and again, showing the hand-to-hand combat here, shows that he was at least even with Bond to a large degree because he's another agent. You never really see Harry and Marv on the same level. That kid is always on another level 9 times out of 10, while Alec is able to kind of match his foe. Makes a couple of mistakes, but Harry and Marv make pretty much every mistake you can make, showing ineptity. I think that's a word.
And time. I'm not confident in that being a word. With that said, John, back over to you. Time starts when you begin speaking.
It's ineptitude is the word. But I just want to point it out, like Harry and Marv beat Kevin McAllister. They have him dead to rights. It's only when Marley hits him with the shovel that they win. They win. So not only are they great thieves who are successful however many times -1 out of however many times that they just divert from their plan, they are not inept. They are greedy, they are prideful, and they succumb to anger. They're not inept. Their plan works every single time except once. That's not inept. That's really good odds. If I played baseball or football, I'd want those odds. Alec Trevelyan, his entire plan is to steal $0, and he dies while doing it. He could have closed the hatch on James Bond. He could have pulled the pole out of the crank, and GoldenEye would have restarted. He doesn't do any of that stuff. He follows him down. He keeps following. He knocks James Bond down 3 separate times and follows him down 3 times, which ultimately has him lead to his death. And for what? It was literally for nothing. To electromagnetic pulse London to steal money that is worthless. It doesn't make any sense. His plan doesn't make any sense. He lets Bond live too many times. That's why Alec Trevelyan died. Harry and Marv live.
And time. All right. That is going to be it for round number 1. I forgot I have to readjust that. As we'll go ahead and bring our 3 judges in. All right. All right, so we'll go ahead and get to the voting because it's not often I get time off during a Battleground match. Man, playing a video is so fucking easy. I'm gonna start doing that all the time. It's way easier for me.
I was saying it worked for the horror movie exhibition.
With that said, Jake, we'll go to you first. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
JPO gets it. This one was very, very tight. He just complete deconstruction of why Harry and Marv are inept by definition, and threw in some really good points about like, hey, Alec Trevelyan actually does do this against Bond from time to time.
All right, Alejandro, to you, same question.
I agree with Tato, man. That was a lot of fun to watch. That was awesome. I actually ended up on the wrong side of that one. I went with John. I do think that JPO did a pretty good job of tearing down Harry and Marv, but like John did such an amazing job of like framing their faults as like character flaws rather than ineptitude. That and also talking about everything wrong. I haven't seen GoldenEye, so getting to hear about the character, it sounded way more incompetent. Plus, his argument that it's more played for comedy, in not so many words, but the concept of it being for comedic purposes kind of gives them a leeway, right? It gives them some wiggle room as to how stupid they can be. So yeah, I went with John.
Sick Deke.
So, Noah.
Speaking of ineptitude, I'll give my reasons since everyone saw what I just did.
Should I just say, there's not many times I can say this sentence. I have never been more happy that my mom's car broke down because we wouldn't have had that moment.
Heyo.
Go ahead, Noah.
Oh, God. I just want to say John had a really good argument there when he was talking about how even like I can't remember the criminals' names, but they were having
Harry and Marv.
Harry and Marv.
Yeah, Harry and Marv. They were good thieves, and his James Bond villain had a really stupid plan and like could have killed Bond multiple times, but just didn't. But I think Jordan really got me with the fact that sure they were good thieves before this when it was empty houses, but one little 8-year-old kid stays a step ahead of them for most of the movie, as well as again what Tato said about how the Bond villain was able to be on par with Bond a couple times. So I went with JPO. So
all right. Oh, and if anybody missed why the fuck the wall broke, go back and find it. Oh, with that said, judges, thank you guys. We're going to go ahead and move on to question number 2. So I'll go ahead and sit you guys in the back and we will bring in, nope, that's the wrong button. We'll bring in the video. Normally I would edit this stuff out, but it's not going to be long enough for me to try. With that said, as I go ahead and load it in and then pause it because it's going to start playing right away. There we go. It's in the top corner, teasing you all there. Question number 2 is focused on a man who just recently had a bit of a swan song in a sense. He got to go back to a part that he played. A lot of people were fans of his. A lot weren't, but a lot of people were fans of his, and it came at a very tumultuous point in his life. And so he's very publicly said that playing this character one more time sort of gave him closure, maybe even in more ways than one, that he didn't know he needed. That said, despite the fact that Academy Award winner Ben Affleck is both a great director and great actor and probably a good writer, if I could remember which of his own films he wrote, he's also had some fucking misses. And as we'll find out, he had one horrible year. And if anybody knows what that means, you know where this question's going. The question number 2 is, what is Ben Affleck's worst film? As I'll go ahead and flip the video. I'll disappear to the back and you guys can enjoy round 2.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron's right. You know, Ben Affleck did make a few bad movies in his time. He made a lot of great movies too. He made some bad movies. There's one bad movie in particular that actually turned Ben Affleck off to making an entire genre of movies for over a decade, and that's Daredevil. after he played Daredevil, Ben Affleck actually gave an interview that said, I don't think I ever want to play another superhero ever again. Now, Daredevil he's probably in my top 3 comic book characters of all time. I was jazzed to see this movie, but they kind of gloss over his entire backstory in this movie. So he's a poorly formed character from his backstory. He's actually a brilliant lawyer. In the movie, he's a shitty lawyer. In the comics, he's like a decent, upstanding citizen with a high moral compass. He comes up kind of rapey in the movie. And, I don't have a problem with like Michael Clark Duncan playing Kingpin. We're not going to go down that road. But clearly, when we see the TV series come later, D'Onofrio kills it. So when we look at the TV series Daredevil versus the movie Daredevil that they gave us, the movie was bad to begin with, but it really puts it in perspective of really how horrible Daredevil was.
And time. All right, Jordan, over to you when ready.
When you say the worst Ben Affleck movie here, I'm going to say the word you're probably thinking of, and there's a reason you're probably thinking of it, because it's the right choice. Gigli. Him and Jennifer Lopez's movie, a movie that basically broke up a couple that should have never broken up because they're back together today after they finally were able to wash away the demon that is Gigli. This movie is cringy even back then. It's even cringier today. He's trying to turn a lesbian here. There's Justin Bartha who's playing somebody with special needs, and that's just poorly done here. You got even Pacino. The whole thing is just bad from the get-go here. It's poorly written, even without the cringy parts. It's poorly written. You never believe these two who have chemistry in real life have this chemistry on screen here. The ending is preposterous. The entire thing has you rolling your eyes from frame one. Gigli.
And time. All right, so it is Daredevil versus Gigli. Seriously, 2003 was a bad year for this guy. That's an ugly fucking year. With that said, John, we'll go back over to you. Why was yours worse? 2 minutes on the clock.
I'm probably not going to touch on like why mine is necessarily worse, but like what are we talking about as bad? Gigli is offensive. It's not bad. It is offensive to people with mental illness. It is offensive to the developmentally disabled. It's offensive to the LGBT community. It's offensive to the concept of romance. However, the movie itself, and as you'll see, a lot of people are coming back to Gigli today and re-reviewing it. It's really not getting as bad a reviews as it did. The movie is just offensive. There are concepts in this movie that turn you off, and that doesn't make it a bad movie. If you get past that, walk-in scene is great. Pacino's scene is great. The dude was Larry Vernito playing Louis. He's really good. He plays the same character in every movie, but he's really good. The scene where Jennifer Lopez is doing yoga and talking about her vagina for 2 minutes is peak cinema. Everybody knows that. There's a lot of good things in Gigli. Daredevil is a slap in the face to the comic book movie community, to the fact that look how long it took Ben Affleck to recover to play a superhero again. Look how long it took Marvel to recover to put Daredevil back on the screen. Colin Farrell, I like his take on Bullseye, but it is out of place in that movie. They're going for like a dark, gritty Daredevil, and they have him playing the Joker version of Bullseye. It's the tonal shifts in Daredevil are horrible. The scene where Joe Pantoliano flicks a cigarette to the ground and the Daredevil logo lights up is like the hottest garbage I've ever seen. It's like, kill me now. Matt Murdock fighting Jennifer Garner as Elektra in a playground where he's not dressed as Daredevil, yet nobody knows he's Daredevil, and like Daredevil doesn't exist. There's so many leaps of faith in this movie that sully the comic, sully the legacy of Daredevil, and sully the intelligence of comic book movie people to begin with. At least Ben Affleck continued to do romantic comedies after Gigli, and he went back to Jennifer Lopez after Gigli. So there really is no huge legacy. The movie's just offensive. It's not technically bad, and it's not acted that poorly either. Like all the things you're going to say about it are just these cringy things. Cringy doesn't equal bad.
And time. So a little late on the pause button there. All right, we're going to go back over to you, Jordan. You have 2 minutes on the clock. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Alrighty, I mean, first of all, let's throw out any comparison to the new Daredevil here. It's a completely different beast here. You're not going to compare, the Spider-Man, live action thing they tried in the 90s to, the Spider-Man, that we got today. So let's throw out any comparison to the new TV show. You mentioned they glossed over Daredevil's intro here. There's a nice intro. How much more do you want in an origin story here? There's a really nice intro with him as the kid, with his dad, David Keith, not Keith David here. And it's actually done pretty well here. I love those first few minutes of Daredevil. And that's my problem with your pick, is that I think you picked a mediocre movie. You did not pick the worst film here. I think there's other movies you could have picked. Phantoms, Reindeer Games, even Paycheck, I think are all fall apart a lot more than Daredevil. There's a lot of moments in Daredevil that are good, including the intro. So I definitely disagree with you on that. Even you agreed. Michael Clark Duncan is pretty good. Colin Farrell is fun. This movie does have different tones here in Daredevil here, so it's not really dark and gritty. It gets gritty at some points, but Colin Farrell definitely fits in with the rest of the tone of this movie here. You mentioned the Pacino stuff's good. No, Pacino feels out of place here. The dialogue is bad. Martin Brest is not a good writer. The only other thing he ran was another mediocre Christopher Walken movie, Going in Style. Martin Brest is not a good writer. That's why he shouldn't have been the writer here. That's why he didn't get a chance to write another movie for another 15 years here. I like how you say offensive. You're almost saying like, yeah, it's offensive, but oh well. No, but that's not good. That's why people didn't like it, because it's 2 hours of watching of offending, the LGBTQ community, of offending special needs community here, and trying to have fun and gobble and her, you said the vagina thing. No, it's fun to share that clip with me and you off air and laugh about how badly it's written. Not that it's actually good cinema. We laugh because it is truly bad here. Gigli does not have many redeeming qualities, including the leads here. Well, Daredevil has several redeeming qualities that we'll fight about probably soon in 4 minutes.
All right, that is time. With that said, we are going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. The timer will start back up, guys, when the first competitor speaks.
I mean, probably doesn't matter what I say, but like, there are movies that are horribly offensive that are beloved. Mickey Rooney plays a Japanese man in Breakfast at Tiffany's, full on.
How can you compare Breakfast at Tiffany's? Because the rest of the movie is great, but people agree that moment is bad. My movie. He's not in every scene. That's wrong. My movie is literally, the core of it is the offensive part. Breakfast at Tiffany still has other redeeming qualities, like your lead actor. Here, I'm saying the offensive part is part of what's going on in the main story.
There's so many movies about developmentally disabled people that are offensive that are not considered bad. So to say that is the
bad.
We're
not talking about those movies. We're talking about this movie that is bad.
But that does not make it bad. There's actually a really great scene in the movie in the morgue when he's cutting his thumb off and Justin Park is singing "Baby Got Back." That's funny.
That's not funny though. That's trying to have your cake and eat it too. No, it's funny in a let's share it and laugh out loud at a B movie theater way. It does not make it a good movie here. And I dare you, John, right now. You said people are coming back to Gigli. Who the fuck is coming back to Gigli? Name one.
I read an article. I read an article, and we can look it up.
From what? Fake.org?
If Aaron wants to fact check, there is actually a whole article on
a lot of people are truly coming back to Daredevil.
They're not doing it as poorly as they did in the past.
Because I know it's not the movie we're talking about. But I think even you would agree, like the director's cut's good, and because there's nuggets there from the main film that you're arguing.
Throw out the director's cut that never saw theaters.
I understand.
Shows how bad it is.
A lot that's in the director's cut is in the movie we got originally, which shows you that there's good nuggets in there, man.
Of course, Bullseye is a lot of fun. Cut. Like maybe one director's cut movie, it's a totally different movie.
We got a multiverse. Let's get Colin Farrell back. Like people like Colin Farrell as Bullseye, man.
And if the whole movie was a wacky screwball comedy, Colin Farrell fits in. It's like this.
Part of it is kind of wacky, though. No, it does tonally shit, man. You say it's not wacky. You mentioned the playground scene. That's wacky.
Badass.
Another great scene in Daredevil, man, is that when the guy gets away and he fights him in the nightclub, and you see how he uses his vision or how his hearing. I love that. The rain. That's great,
his
man.
backstory is glossed over. They do show the accident when he's a kid. Then it just jumps when he's an adult. It cuts over all the training.
What do you want? A 3-hour movie?
They crammed everything into this movie. They had Bullseye, Elektra, Kingpin, his backstory. They crammed everything into this movie. If it was just
and you can call it Russian, you can call it mediocre, but you can't call it
made more sense.
A dreadful
movies. It's an antagonist and a protagonist. That's it. They cram so much junk in here, and it's absolute hot garbage. The TV series,
there's no junk. They cram like every superhero movie. They cram 2 villains in. That's what pretty much everyone does.
And they're usually like 3 hours long.
And they crammed a love interest. That's not that much. My movie is over 2 hours. Does not need to be 2 hours. It should be a tight 120. Actually, it should be a tight negative because it shouldn't exist. But again, it overbloats itself here. and you were ready for this thing to wrap up here. Daredevil cramps a lot in, but again, at least something's happening here. You know what I mean? There's some playground scene's not great, but then the great scene of them.
Why does the playground scene start? Because he friggin' tries to sexually accost her. Like Matt Murdock would never do that. Like he basically.
You say, first of all, you can't compare what a comic book character does in the movie. We're not comparing Matt Murdock. We're comparing this movie. I don't know, Daredevil. I didn't mind it.
That is not Matt Murdock's character.
You say you should be true to the character. You're allowed to make changes.
A reference in the comic books where Matt Murdock is rapey. He's rapey.
I don't care about the comic books.
The comic books. The only scene where he's practicing law in this movie, he loses the case. Like a rapist goes free just so he can go
and
after
then
and beat the shit out
he
of him.
goes free, and then you have maybe the best scene in the movie. So I'm okay with him losing the case if it goes on to have a great scene.
Daredevil, that is not how Daredevil acts. Daredevil doesn't hunt people and kill them. That's not who Daredevil is. It's totally against type.
In this movie, it is though.
All right, everybody, take a breath. All right, we're gonna get into the 1 minute closings. John, you're back up first. Time starts when you begin speaking.
JPO seems to be okay with like a comic book character being portrayed however you want to portray it. So if we had a Batman movie where he was like he owned a rug store and gave tea parties to 6-year-old girls, it would be fine because hey, it's just something new for the people. Daredevil is not a shitty lawyer. He's not a rapist. He doesn't let people go free just so he can go kill them. That is not read any Daredevil comic. I know it gets gritty like in the 90s, but the Daredevil they are trying to introduce, this is not Daredevil. Even in the TV series, it's not like that at all. And the TV series is heralded as one of the greatest things that in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Marvel Properties universe, right? G. Lee, however, it's a romantic comedy. Is it offensive? I am ceding that it is offensive. There are plenty of offensive scenes in great movies. I will hold up Breakfast at Tiffany's. Mickey Rooney portraying a Japanese person in every other scene in that movie is one of the most offensive things in the history of cinema. People love Breakfast at Tiffany's. I'm not saying you need to love G. Lee, but as far as a romantic comedy goes, it gets from point A to point B. Yes, the ending's a little bit weird. They're probably going to die 10 minutes after the movie ends, but you know what? The journey there is actually entertaining if you watch it with an objective eye, which I'm begging you to do.
And time. All right, Jordan, we'll go back over to you for the closing minute. Time starts when you begin speaking.
John's entire argument here, folks, is simply that he doesn't like what they did in the movie because it's not based on the comic books here. We're talking about movies here. We're talking about what is the worst movie here. And if you go into Daredevil here, there's plenty of moments that redeem itself. He's a shitty lawyer. He's not actually a shitty lawyer. He has that case won. The guy gets off due to a technicality, which guess what? Happens in real life, even with the greatest lawyers. It happens in the TV show where he doesn't win every case because of shitty technicalities. And now what does he have to do? He has to go and exact revenge. We take liberties with superheroes all the time. It happened with Superman. That's why some people liked it. Some people were fine with it because we're talking about the movie itself here. My movie does not have redeeming qualities here. There are some great scenes from when he takes out that gangster that gets away to where the final showdown with Kingpin here. Gigli is offensive from the beginning, but it's not just offensive. It's badly written by a guy that doesn't have many screenplays. He has like 2, and he wasn't given another chance for another 15 years here. The characters are bad. It's cringy then. It's cringy now. And that's why these two probably never worked together because it fell apart so badly.
And time. I'm muted. You guys aren't hearing shit. All right, we're gonna go ahead and put the video away and bring the judges in. Maybe I should put the video to where you guys can be seen. And actually, there we go. Nope. Oh, that's why. Okay, I forgot. Yeah. All right. So with that said, Alejandro, you are up first on this one. So I'll go to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
That one was way less fun to watch. Man, that got brutal real quick. I personally don't hate either of these movies. I think Ben Affleck does have worse movies out there, but Jiggly did come to my head when I heard the question because I think that's the sort of go-to answer. John surprised the shit out of me by choosing Daredevil, so it was really a point of like who stayed consistent the most, and I think John pulled away with that one on my end, only because like there was a whole lot like there's too much in the movie to do it justice. It's poor character devel. Cutting off a thumb equals comedy. I was really confused about that, but I think JPO's biggest complaint against Daredevil, saying that you can't compare it to the comic book, like he's a literary character by definition. So if you have a way that character is supposed to act, I think it's not unfair to to pull those examples. So I went with John.
All right, Noah, over to you. Same question.
I'm sorry, I'm figuring out how to phrase this because I don't want to repeat information that you just heard. I'm also going to go with John here, if you can read my handwriting. Like Alejandro said, everything he said, but also I think his main argument is the one that sold it for me. I think it's very persuasive that just because it's offensive doesn't mean it's bad, and he was able to give examples why with the performances and everything like that. I just didn't hear enough from JPO about why his movie was so bad, besides it was just offensive. So I'm going with John.
All right. Well, judges, thank you guys so much. We're going to go ahead and sit you guys in the back, and I hope all of you at home have enjoyed that change of pace, because we'll be back in just a moment with real competitors. And we're back, and they're here, guys. The competitors are here with us, enjoying that 1-1 tie score. You at home may take that as it's a fair game, everything to play for from here, but these guys are only thinking about the fact that they may have to play a blind round now, which is just scary. With that said, though, of course, guys, welcome. I didn't do an intro necessarily because you weren't here, but John, of course, coming in 4-2 with 1 knockout. His opponent, JPO, 4-3 with 1 knockout. 2 very, very evenly matched competitors based off our judges' words and, of course, the debate on screen. Boys, how are we feeling coming back to this about a week later?
Weird.
Unprecedented, Aaron. It's I'm happy to. I'm always happy to be here with JPO. I just don't think I want to be here with him in this context. But whatever, it is what it is. You put us together, and you're making us fight each other, and that's just the way it is. But I'll still respect Jordan Pierce Owens in the morning. So that's all that matters.
Yes, when we wake up in the same bed together, I'll look at him and I'll go, nothing has changed, and I'll stroke his cheek.
Yeah, and I'll even I don't care what spoon JPO wants to be, big, little, he gets to choose.
We flip-flop.
Yeah, I'm going to let you have choice, and that's just the way we are.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just love the reality in which you guys drive cross country to be together.
And
I'm flying.
Oh, that's a lot less romantic.
It's 2023. Who drives anywhere? I mean,
in a few weeks, me, Florida, 7 hours to Atlanta.
Atlanta's a great city.
All right, let's go ahead and jump into it. So this whole thing came about because of a horror show situation that saw me walking away from a match because my mom's car broke down. So we couldn't have picked a better question to lead off with. There's another part to this question, and I don't know how to segue to that, so I'll just say I was born in the 90s. Your question is, what is the best horror film of the 1990s? There we go.
You weren't born in the 90s. You fucking old.
I'm old.
October of 99. I just barely count. With that said, we'll go ahead and jump into this. I believe, Jordan, you are up first. I should know that because I just watched the fucking video.
That's what I have in my notes, which is a code for notes.
Go ahead and jump into it. Here is a live timer. I will
how does this work again?
Just scream at each other.
I'm trying not to do that, but I probably will wind up doing it anyway.
All right, Jordan, you're up first, sir. Best of luck, guys. Jordan, minute starts when you begin.
When we're talking the best horror film of the 1990s, I don't actually need to even answer this based on just that subgenre of horror. I'm going to give you one of the best films of the 90s, maybe the best film. I'm giving you Silence of the Lambs. I mean, what more do you want? You have some of the best top-notch acting, including people that get nominated for an Oscar for only being on screen for a handful of minutes here. You have a fantastic leading lady. This revitalized the whole category for not only giving respect to actually horror for once, which is very rare, but then just the Hannibal Lecter character, which has now gone on to have a great TV series, and it really revitalized that character that started to be lost after that Manhunter movie. Silence of the Lambs, I think, is the best written, best directed movies of its year, of the decade, And that, therefore, I think it quite kind of easily makes it the best horror movie of the decade here. It gives you a little bit of everything you want, from characters to memorable villains, more than one memorable villain, even in Silence of the Lambs. And as the cool kids say, it's a banger.
Are we defining Henry as cool now? Is that what we're doing?
Oh no, is he the only one that says that?
No, other people say banger.
He's the one I hear say it the most.
Let's be fair to people who say banger.
All right.
But I only say bangers when they're 4 and above. Henry gives a banger to like a 2.5.
Yes, he does.
Lyle Crocodile. What a banger.
What's the movie
Love you, Henry.
said?
Lyle Crocodile.
Lyle Crocodile. It was a banger. I love you, Henry.
That crocodile was one banger. All right, John, over to you. You got 1 minute on the clock when ready.
I want to know what you and that crocodile did.
Ayo.
I guess I'm going in like a totally different direction, because like when I think of horror as like a community. I think of horror as its own separate niche. I don't like to think of like cross-genre movies. The best pure horror movie, and then one of the most important movies, not only in the 90s, but in the horror genre in general, is Scream. Not only did it launch a franchise, but it actually saved horror. If you look at all the slasher movies, all of the big franchises that came before it, Friday the 13th was stale, Nightmare on Elm Street was stale. I mean, New Nightmare kind of helped out a little bit, but really it was when Wes Craven decided to team with Kevin Williamson, get this team of actors together and do Scream, and introduce us to a new era of meta horror that we actually saw the revitalization of the horror genre that's still going on today. Clever writing, clever criticism, and Scream has centered itself in the horror community as the island that all other horror movies are reflected against. Every Scream movie that comes out is a commentary on where we stand in horror in general, and we don't even have this commentary. We don't have this community. We don't have this running mirror held up to the horror community if Wes Craven, Kevin Williamson, and his crew don't give us Scream in 1996.
All right, that is time. With that said, Jordan, back over to you. 2 minutes on the clock. That is how this works. When ready.
I dig Scream. It's a lot of fun, but at the same time, well, it kind of revitalized, kind of the slasher pick. It didn't really help anything else. You mentioned Freddy, you mentioned Jason. Those continue to be stale, and we only got repetitive sequels here. New Nightmares, it was kind of the thing that set it back up, because we had to come back to this new generation of being a little bit meta and whatnot. But when you take a look at Scream as a whole, though, you definitely do feel the budget here. It's a smaller budget. He doesn't really have much to work with. It's not the best directed Wes Craven movie here, based on what he has to work with here. Silence of the Lambs just hits on every note. I don't know why you're trying to like crossbreed into what the subgenre in the community here. Like, no, this obviously belongs in the community here. You have not one but 2 serial killers here. You have some of the most tense moments, and one thing that I love about it is that there's tense moments where it's just dialogue. When it's just it's them talking through the glass, and that's one of the best tense moments, and that is horror as well, just as well as multiple characters that you kind of sort of care about getting stabbed, and not even except for that first bloody kill with Drew Barrymore, which is more of a prosthetic bloody thing. You don't really get to see a hell of a lot here too, which you kind of want from Scream 1. You're missing that in Scream 1 because they just don't really have the budget or the time for it here. Everything is on screen for Silence of the Lambs here, from literally having again, it's on the page here. It's nominated for Best Picture, Director, Actor, Actress, Screenplay, Editing, Sound. That doesn't happen here. That shows you that this movie, from the main actor to the main actress to even the sound, it's on key here, man. They have the budget, even without a huge budget, the budget they have to work with here, they're able to put together kind of a masterpiece here. And I think it's the best directed of its director here, unlike Wes Craven, who I think, again, made a really fun movie that helped kind of revitalize the fun genre of it. But as far as the best thing that just has everything going for it here, I think it's still Silence of the Lambs.
And time. All right, John, back over to you.
I think maybe JPO and I have a difference of opinion on like what horror means to the horror community. And Scream is a lot of fun. Yeah, it is a lot of fun because all the people in the horror community want to have a lot of fun. We were missing out on getting a lot of fun because, all those movies are stale and getting driven into the ground. And we didn't really get many franchise movies after that, except with the exception of David Gordon Green's Halloween trilogy, which actually was pretty good and wouldn't really be as good as it is right now if it wasn't that the predecessor, if he wasn't inheriting this Kevin Williamson radio silence kind of era of meta horror we have rushing in. Silence of the Lambs is has horror elements. Is a crime procedural movie. It's a mystery thriller with horror elements. It is not a horror movie. I'm not saying it's carpetbagging. I'm not saying it's not a horror movie at all. Definitely has horror elements, and it's a fantastic movie. It won Best Picture. I'd be stupid to argue and say Silence of the Lambs doesn't have great acting, great directing, great cinematography, great score. It's a great movie. Is it the best horror movie? No. It's the best mystery thriller movie, 100% hands down. There are way better horror movies that are pure horror movies in the 90s, and Scream is definitely one of them. In fact, I would argue that if you had JPO and you took him off camera, you asked him what his favorite horror movie is, he would definitely tell you it's Scream. He wouldn't say Silence of the Lambs. He said, fuck you when I picked Scream, because you knew he was going to pick Scream anyway. Anyway, besides all of that, Scream does have a smaller budget. It is a small town slasher movie, basically. It's not meant to have huge overtures. You're not going to have the big scenes like Quantico or the jail cell like you have in Silence of the Lambs. It is a small town slasher with teens, and it does it extremely well. It does it better than any slasher movie that came before it. I would argue. And basically, I do. Does Silence of the Lambs stand every note? Yeah, I'm not arguing at all that Silence of the Lambs is a bad movie. I'm not. I'm saying JPO is taking a movie that exists in other genres primarily, and it's carpetbagging its way through horror. If you want a pure horror movie, Silence of the Lambs actually has no impact on the horror community in general. Nothing really impacts anything after it. We've had serial killer movies, but nothing really pays homage to Silence of the Lambs. If you look at all the horror movies that come after Scream, immediately after Scream, I Know What You Did Last Summer, and Urban Legend, and every slasher movie that comes after it, every meta movie that came after Scream exists for Scream. Silence of the Lambs is an island in the community. It's a great movie, but doesn't really influence anything. Scream has influenced everything for the past almost 30 years.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the
strike any backstage
discussion.
talk. That's a low blow bullshit move, John.
We're going to jump into the 4-minute open discussion. You guys can talk about anything that you would like. I mean, I'd suggest you focus on the movies, but you can talk about backstage. You can talk about your favorite, I don't know, popcorn. Why was that the first thing I thought of? Anyways, 4 minutes on the clock.
Let us go to 4 minutes. Are we doing it?
JPO, you love Scream, right?
Loud noises.
You love Scream.
It's fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, but it's not the best horror movie.
You
Your whole argument sounds like your last argument, where like it's Daredevil not from the comics. Now you're talking about the horror community, and it didn't do much for. That's not the question here. This isn't for the purists.
Legacy matters. If you're saying legacy doesn't matter, then I don't know how you're a movie fan. Legacy matters.
Well,
Legacy,
Scream
100%
never even was a thought into any other award show other than maybe a horror one, because it's just good in that one little niche.
There are hundreds of
my movie
movies,
back because it's great
horror movies
multiple
that have not
genres.
won Oscars.
That's not fair.
There is a bias against horror movies and Oscars, like for going back to the beginning of time. Everybody,
because they need to be next level, unfortunately, and yours is not next level. Yours is fun. It's meta.
It wasn't trying to
bring your friends, have a good
slasher.
time.
A slasher movie will never be nominated for an Oscar.
And directing, there's no way yours would even be in the thought process, because it's
the
not.
The question
that
is not what is the best movie of the 90s. The question is what is the best horror movie.
Right.
Of the 90s.
But my movie's also just a better movie. That happens to also include a horror.
It's an episode of Criminal Minds that goes on for 2 hours. That's what your movie's an episode of Criminal Minds that goes on for 2 hours. It's not a
Criminal Minds wishes it was as good as mine, man. Like that's, and you talk about how it made an impact. You mentioned mediocre movies here. Urban Legend, I Know What You Did Last Summer. Those aren't very good movies. So if that's
I didn't say they were good movies. I said it made an impact. You're twisting what I'm saying.
But that's not a good impact here.
They were still successful at the box office. They were still successful at the box office.
Urban Legend was not successful.
It's not the same embarrassing slasher history that went through the 80s and 90s.
And I don't know why you mentioned David Gordon Green. It's got his tone is nothing like Scream, and also those movies weren't.
The Halloween movies were successful. You sit here and act like they weren't is a lie. Is a flat out lie.
Well, what's that got to do with Scream though? I'm just saying you're going off on these tangents.
I'm saying it's a slasher movie that came after Scream. Everything that comes after Scream owes itself to Scream. Scream as a franchise has maintained its relevancy up until this year.
Trying to connect to that trilogy.
First of all, a Scream movie came out this year. It's been relevant since 1996. It's relevant. Like Wes Craven created the franchise.
Yeah,
where he's allowed to be critical of the community.
And mine is also
spawned had no commentary on the horror community.
A TV series that's
highly
highly related, unlike your TV series, but that's besides the point. Your TV series is trash.
That television series has absolutely nothing to do with.
Well, you're talking about sequels. I'm just talking about mine has also spawned other things that people have very well loved.
I agree that the Hannibal TV series is a
great character here. Mine has one of the greatest characters of all time. What's your greatest character? Is Sydney? Like, she's fine. But like that's why people were fine for not being the last one.
Survived through 5 different movies. Like you're saying,
it got
making
boring.
These comedic arguments like they're true. They're not. Like everybody knows it's iconic. Scream is a franchise that's been The
There's nothing
longevity
more
of the Scream franchise.
iconic. You say
There is
one
not a
of your favorite
bad
characters.
movie in that
No
franchise.
one can name a character from Scream. If you see one of your favorite horror characters, it's going to be Hannibal Lecter is going to be on everyone's list. That's going to be on
they can
everyone's
name
Mount
Hannibal Lecter and they can
Rushmore.
name Ghostface.
Unlike Scream,
of course.
because then what are
They
you going to
name
say? Ghostface, but that's multiple people. That's almost cheating in a way.
It's and multiple people played Hannibal Lecter. I mean, like, come on. I think
No.
Hannibal Lecter.
But you would never go, oh, maybe Brian Cox, maybe that prequel guy. No, you go to my Hannibal Lecter.
No
every
one is
single time.
arguing that Anthony Hopkins gave a bad performance. That would be stupid of me to do that. What I'm saying is your movie is
best
in
performance
multiple
out of both.
genres, and that's why it's beloved.
That doesn't make it not
It is
the greatest
not-
horror
it is
movie,
not
though.
a great
Just
horror
because
movie.
it succeeds in
It
more
has
than one
horror
genre
elements.
doesn't mean it also succeeds in this genre. I don't get that
It's
argument.
a crime movie. It's an action movie, sort of. It's definitely a mystery thriller.
And it's fantastic in all of
horror
those
elements.
genres with horror first there, because you also got Bundy, Levine. That's iconic too.
No one's
Look,
saying
I
Buffalo
fucking-
Bill is not an iconic character. I am saying Ghostface
Right,
is definitely
these
a more
characters
iconic character
go down
than Buffalo
differently.
Bill.
is not
Ghostface
somebody
is
who
probably a
we
more
figured
iconic
today,
character
but
than
we
Hannibal
still love
Lecter, to be
Buffalo
honest
Bill,
with you.
and it's
Because
being
merchandising
referenced still
alone,
to this
Ghostface
day.
is killing it. Like, Scream is definitely a more influential movie in this genre. It's the only.
We're not talking influential. Wrong debate.
And time. All right. We're going to go into the 1 minute closings. Jordan, you are up first. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Scream's a fun movie here, but there's I'm not trying to debate this all just based on Oscars. No, that's not my number one debate here. But the thing is, it wasn't even a thought process. You know, it's a fun movie that sparked lesser sequels here that we're still getting to this day here. Silence of the Lambs was a movie that transcended. Yes, it transcended horror, but that doesn't mean that's a bad thing. It means that this got out in front of everybody. This got out in front of my mom, my dad, who wouldn't necessarily go to see a horror film, but they went to go see a horror film in the theaters here because of how good it was. Nobody even pieced together that Anthony Hopkins only in it for several minutes and still got the Oscar. Jodie Foster's at the top of her game. Buffalo Bill is so much fun. There's two iconic horror characters in my movie here, and they haven't been overdone too. And it's the performances, it's the direction, everything, every little bit of money is seen on screen here to make one of the best movies, not just of the year, not just of horror, but of the decade. Man, like that is why Hannibal Lecter is on the Mount Rushmore, and he's only been in two to three films. My Anthony Hopkins.
And time. All right, John, back over to you. 1 minute on the clock.
JPO says he's not hanging his hat on the fact that it's Oscar nominated, but his whole argument is just based on the fact that, look, Silence of the Lambs is a great movie. No one's arguing that Silence of the Lambs is a bad movie. No, that would be stupid, like I said. What I'm saying is it has no legacy, and it's really going to come down to, like, what is the best legacy? Scream created a totally new subgenre of movies where it has made itself a beacon in the horror community. Any horror movie that comes out will be commented on by Scream. Wes Craven and Kevin Williamson created the formula where they looked at the entire horror landscape as it was, and they pointed out what was wrong with everything in an entertaining way. And they forced movie makers, and they forced writers, and they forced directors to make themselves better. Silence of the Lambs didn't. Silence of the Lambs came, kicked ass, won its awards, and didn't influence a damn thing going forward. He talks about bad sequels. Red Dragon was a step down from Silence of the Lambs, so like that's a moot point, right? Yes, it is. And then basically, it doesn't matter. What is more influential today, right? If you look around and you look at the horror landscape, you're going to see Ghostface has a much 100 times impact over Hannibal Lecter.
And time. All right. I'm going to go ahead and sit you guys in the back and bring the judges in for this one. All right. So in terms of fact checking, because I did do it for this round. All right. So in terms of fact checking, first off, I feel like I don't have to, but I am going to, just because a lot of different aspects of a lot of different franchises were brought up. For what it's worth, for both of these films, they are both franchises. In continuity as to what relates to the film, Silence of the Lambs is an originator of the franchise. It is not connected to the film Manhunter, which came before it, and it developed 3 sequels, which followed in the form of Hannibal, Red Dragon, and then the prequel, Hannibal Rising. The television show is not connected to it, as is the previous film, as is any other adaptation they've done. It's just those 4 movies. Scream is Scream 1 through 6 through the modern day. The television show developed for MTV is considered unconnected from the rest of the franchise. So just to establish that, if that matters to anyone watching. With that said, Scream's budget was brought up and focused on for a little bit. Scream has a reported budget of somewhere between 14 and 15 million. In terms of comparing it to other films at the time, I pulled up multiple different horror films just to sort of cite reference. Some of Wes Craven's films around that time included Vampire in Brooklyn, which was made for 14 million. He made New Nightmare a couple years previous for 8 million. I Know What You Did Last Summer was made afterwards. That was made for 17 million. And Halloween H2O, another slasher film around that time, was made for 17 million. Also, when you put it through an inflation calculator and bump that to this year, the film was made for about 28 million in 2023 money. Scream 6 was made for about 35. So the concept that the film is low budget, you could argue maybe, but in terms of what it was competing with around the time in the franchise itself, I'd say it's a mid-budget film. The fuck you that was referenced outside to the chat is not, as far as my association, in direct connection to Scream. Jordan, I see you panicking. That's not what I'm going to say. The fuck you comes after John submitted all of his answers prior to Jordan. But with that said, it was not for Scream. Please do not hold that against him for that. That was a moot point. And then because they talked about the influence that it had on the future, the one film I decided to look into just as a reference, Urban Legend, which was the one that I think may have been hit on the most by both competitors. The film did turn a profit for the studio. And it also, it wasn't successful, but it did turn a profit for the studio. However, it was noted as a ripoff of Scream, not necessarily an influence by Scream. So you can say what you will with that. With that said, though, Noah, I'll go to you first. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
This was extremely difficult. It may be the hardest one. I flip-flopped so many times during this. It's insane. I think it came down to an argument of what the movie does versus what it has. And JPO kept stating how his movie has all these Oscars, how it has these amazing writers and directors and everything like that. But John was able to sell that it saves horror, it is pure horror, while Silence of the Lambs has horror elements. I think he was able to say it's pure horror. It basically created a new genre. It not the slasher genre, but being meta and having their commentary on the horror genre as in general, and being able to point out, like he said, in different eras, just be able to point out things about the horror genre, and just the influential and the legacy argument didn't really work for me. But in general, John won me over. But it was very close this entire round.
Okay, Jake, up to you. Same question.
Yeah, I got JPO here. I like the bricks John was laying on lines that Noah said, but JPO ultimately said, my movie is better, and was met with no resistance. So what is the best film? JPO gets it, but he also did defend that legacy bit and say, hey, I had some sequels too and stuff like that. So JPO.
All right, and Alejandro.
I didn't even think about it, but yeah, we all have really specific opinions on this particular subject. I do also think it was incredibly close. I tried to give it a fair shot because I don't think Scream is actually as good as everybody thinks it is. But it did boil down to the knocks that John was setting up and then backpedaling on, because he did talk about the franchise element and then turned around and said it was a bad show for Scream, and then it's irrelevant to horror fans, even though I have all 3 of those books on my shelf at the moment. But yeah, exactly what Tato said. JPO said that Silence of the Lambs a better movie? It absolutely is, and John agreed with him.
All right. Judges, thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and sit you guys backstage. We will go ahead and jump into the fourth question of this matchup here. And with that said, for question number 4, we are going to I don't even know how to naturally transition this. This is just so different. What is the most underrated DreamWorks movie? Because I don't know, maybe, by the way, DreamWorks Animation, I'd never type it in, but that's clearly what I mean. No one in the history of the universe, including Steven Spielberg, has cared about DreamWorks Live Action Studio. But what is the most underrated film? With that said, we're going to go into it. John, you are up first, sir, so the timer will start for you once you begin speaking.
Underrated, right? Like, what does underrated really mean? Does it mean underseen? Because my movie's underseen. Does it mean, not appreciated by audiences? My movie, all told, has not been appreciated by audiences. Does it mean doesn't gain traction domestically? Yeah, because my movie didn't really gain any traction domestically either. I'm talking about Nick Park's kind of magnum opus, Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. This movie is, I will admit, it is very British, and it does incredibly well overseas, does incredibly well in its native United Kingdom, does incredibly well in every other country. And even though it has spawned numerous spinoffs, numerous television shows within the United States, including Shaun the Sheep, which my kids enjoy a whole lot, Wallace and Gromit: Curse of the Were-Rabbit doesn't really get much love, and neither do all the shorts that came before it, like A Grand Day Out, The Wrong Trousers, and all those things. Even though this movie, just like in the last argument, won an Oscar for Best Animated Feature. We don't really love stop motion animation in America. We don't really love claymation in America. We don't really love British stuff in America. But I'll tell you what, all of that ties into the fact that just makes Wallace and Gromit: Curse of the Were-Rabbit really underrated.
And time. All right, Jordan, over to you, sir. You got an opening minute on the clock when you're ready.
All right, so far I feel like me and John are always taking these questions from different angles. So let's do it again, John. I went with Megamind is my voter for most underrated because, I think this is a movie that people kind of slept on. It got kind of mid-reviews to a degree here. It wasn't exactly the most well-reviewed movie here, but I think over time, man, just from the community to even like friends and family, this is something that I think you could throw on for anybody here. It's got the fun superhero element to it here, and it's got that real fun kind of Wreck-It Ralph vibe of, maybe not a bad guy, and I think it's also a really good tale to tell somebody here. Is that you can always turn things around, and I think it's got a sweet message here, and it's also just really funny. I wish Will Ferrell would do more voice work because I think he lets it extremely well to Megamind. And yeah, I just think overall, mine is kind of one of those. It's underrated and finally maybe catching up, and I think really finding its love from audiences now. A few years later, and just having not overly done emotion, but enough, and then it's definitely the laughs are here. So, Megamind.
And time. All right, Wallace and Gromit versus Megamind. With that said, John, back over to you. 2 minutes on the clock.
Chadwick Webb messaged me today, and he said, when you did that Foghorn Leghorn closing in the Ryan Johnson debate, I really loved it. I said I would do more voices in my debates. So I think the reason why Megamind is not very important in the great landscape is because a better movie with the same plot came out about a month before it. And of course, I'm talking about Despicable Me. Megamind is Despicable Me's little bitch, and to be Despicable Me's little bitch for the entirety of animation history. It is done better. It has more of a legacy, more merchandising. People gravitated to Despicable Me. They will never, ever gravitate to Megamind. Megamind has a 72% on Rotten Tomatoes for critic score. Do you know what the audience score is? It's also 72%, and that's based on 100,000 reviews. That means throughout the entire time Megamind has existed, the score hasn't even gone up. Wallace and Gromit, however, reviewed 10 times less, only 10,000 reviews. And like I said, we're Americans. I understand, British stuff is not really engaging to us, but this movie won tons of awards. The animation style is incredible. Everybody knows that when you have claymation, stop motion animation, the power of love goes into those movies, just the amount of time these movies take to make. Wallace and Gromit is endearing. There's lots of great scenes. There's lots of great acting from Ralph Fiennes, Helena Bonham Carter in this movie. They kill it. It is funny. All of the creature features are done excellent. All the animation, I put the animation in Wallace and Gromit up against the animation animation to Megamind. Megamind is another DreamWorks Animation mass-produced thing that got overshadowed by Despicable Me. Wallace and Gromit is a labor of love. And anybody who loves animation, anybody who can look at the craftsmanship put into a movie is going to see that Wallace and Gromit is superior. The only thing holding it back is the fact that there's poor marketing for this British movie in America. We love American stuff. We love, I guess, Will Ferrell and Brad Pitt. We don't love Nick Park. Who's Nick Park? He's just this British guy that plays with clay. But I swear, if anybody actually went in with an objective mind and watched Wallace and Gromit Curse of the Were-Rabbit, it's 100 times the movie. Not as good as Despicable Me, but 100 times the movie.
And time. All right, Jordan, over to you, sir. 2 minutes when ready.
This is weird. For my argument, can we just cut what John said and replay it? Because I feel like he's just giving my points away. Yeah, mine's in the 70s. I admit that. That's why it's underrated, because I feel like if you show it to most people, they're going to dig it. I feel like every friend, every family member, we've all kind of liked it. And I think at the time when those first match reviews came out, first of all, let's not act like 70's a horrible score. It's really not that bad. I know it's not your 95, John, but it's not that bad, hence why I think it's underrated here. Comparing me to Despicable Me, I would choose this 1,000 times over Despicable Me. Yours has horrible, annoying characters here. It's made money, but this is about an actual quality, not just about mass production and what people have seen. Then we'd be talking about those 7 Transformers movies. Problem with your movie here is that I just think you have, unfortunately, John, at the end of the day, you have a niche audience. People that are into that particular style of comedy, which is niche. I do like it, hence why it won the Oscar, which, by the way, is the greatest marketing you ever could have. This movie was marketed fine. It got out in front of my eyes as far as trailers, and it had that great marketing of it. Won an Oscar, which now you can put on the DVD and everything. But at the end of the day, it's not something I'll necessarily show my 4 or 7-year-old. They'd be bored by it. Not something I'm going to show a teenager. They'd be over that kind of humor here. That's what I think, unfortunately, is the only thing holding your movie back. Otherwise, how is an Oscar-winning movie underrated? It's not. How is a 95% movie by Rotten Tomatoes underrated? It's not. Your movie's underrated. Maybe it's underseen. That's the argument. If that was the question, yeah, you might have the win here, but we're talking about underrated here. That's why, yeah, I picked my movie that's in the 70s because I think it should be in the 80s. It should be in the 90s because it does have also a great amount of heart as well. It has way more heart than Despicable Me. He kind of backfalls into being a nice guy. Will Ferrell literally has the world and then still ends up having a heart. Way better told story.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. The timer will start when the first competitor speaks.
All right, let me just say one thing. You can jump in and talk a little bit.
Go, of course.
Is your movie underrated or is it just correctly rated? Because it's been at the same level.
No.
The entire. We're talking modern day.
What do you mean at the same level? Most of those reviews, once they're in, they're in. You're talking about the
but it's an aggregate
critic
review
scores.
It's aggregate reviews. It's still at 72%, and that
because
means
not many people are making brand new
rated.
reviews. Once the reviews are in, you're passing. Yeah, I do think it's underrated because I do think it should be in the 80s or the 90s. Unlike your movie, it's in the 95s.
No,
your movie is the
critics
one.
review is at 95, and the audience review is significantly lower. It's in the high 70s. And
then that's even worse, John, because you
reviews.
just show that people that did see your movie, because it's not about whether a large amount saw it. You just told me a small amount of people saw your movie and all agreed that it's that it's in the 70s.
That is better than your movie, though. I mean, the aggregate reviews of less is still more than your movie. What I'm saying is, critics reviews has nothing to do with being underrated because the whole Oscar shade comes off of
your movie has a little bit of views and equals out to 70s. That's a worse sign, John. Mine has more reviews and still equals 70s, while yours has a smaller chunk and equals. Yours should be higher than
review of people that have seen this movie and over again, and it's got Will Ferrell and Brad Pitt and Tina Fey and Jonah Hill and all this stuff.
And they're really funny. Ben Stiller, keep going.
If there was a renaissance about this movie,
because it's mostly niche
it would go up.
British humor that's silent for the majority of the movie.
It is not a silent movie. JPO has not seen this movie. It is not a silent movie.
The one character sounding the entire time.
The dog is silent. Yes, you're right. The dog is silent. And I guarantee there's dogs in Megamind that are also silent.
But they're not they're not the vocal point. Your movie is lovable. There's a reason it won the Oscar, but to me that doesn't make it.
Your movie is part of the mass production end of DreamWorks, and my movie is part of the artistic end of DreamWorks.
You say mass production. First of all, I also don't like that argument too, because you're like, mine's a labor of love, motherfucker. Every movie's a labor of love. You telling me the writer didn't write that with his heart?
No animators working on it. Nick Park hands-on did this movie. Like the creator of this movie is the creator of this movie.
Doesn't mean mine's not a labor of love. I take offense to that.
Name one animator that worked on Megamind.
Is a labor of love. Every movie's a labor of love.
Give me the name of one animator that worked on Megamind.
I don't know animators. That's not fair. Ask any of the judges. No one's going to know the animators.
It doesn't matter because Nick Park is the head animator of Wallace and Gromit. He's a hands-on guy. It's his project.
I'm glad you know that and you've read that recently. I'm sorry I didn't read my animators. I read what made me laugh more. What I think is underrated. It has a great cast. What has a great story. I think mine hits all the points, including the focal point that we are discussing here.
It never got traction because of Despicable Me, and it never will get traction because of Despicable Me. And that doesn't mean
and that's why it's underrated. I think unfortunately,
Despicable Me isn't holding Megamind down. Despicable Me did it better. It's rated correctly.
Despicable Me first, and then my movie unfortunately got a little bit left under the rug, hence underrated.
No, correctly rated because if it was, they were very short time period apart. If it was a good movie, it would have gotten seen just as much as Despicable Me.
And honestly, I think more and more it has. I have organically found multiple people that have said, "Yeah, I really like that movie, man," including
DreamWorks Animation makes sequels. Where's Megamind's sequel?
As the money shows it, and what is your sequel? How many sequels did this have?
How many sequels has Wallace and Gromit had? It's spun off entire television. Shaun the Sheep had 2 movies.
That's a television show.
What?
No,
Shaun the Sheep had 2 movies.
We're not talking Shaun the Sheep.
Shaun the Sheep is a character in Wallace and Gromit.
And the Penguins also had one. I'm saying, we're talking about the movies.
Were the Penguins and Megamind?
These particular 2 movies. No, I'm just saying, Shaun the Sheep, I think it's got a backscape. That doesn't show that your movie's underrated because Shaun the Sheep had a TV series. Is all I'm saying.
All I'm saying is it's the only reason why my movie is underrated is because American audiences embrace it. Internationally, this movie is a gigantic hit. In Britain, it's a gigantic hit. We're talking.
So it's only underrated in a small section.
Can I just say, I love you guys for listening. That was great. With that said, John, we're going to go into the closing minutes with you first. Time starts and you begin speaking, sir.
All told, Megamind is it's one of these mass-produced movies from DreamWorks Animation. They're putting out 1, 2, 3 a year. No-name editors, no-name animators. JPO can't name somebody that's working with me. Not that I expected them to, but I can tell you who the person who worked on the movie is. Nick Park had a hands-on every single piece of this movie. Wallace and Gromit is art. Megamind is mass-produced stuff. And it did come out in the same year as Despicable Me. And if it was as good a movie as JPO said, somebody would have said something when the movie came out. They did not. Despicable Me ran over this movie all the way up to this present day. They ran over it. DreamWorks is not shy about making sequels. If Megamind was as beloved as JPO said, they would have, God damn it, they would have made a sequel. They make sequels for every other movie. Wallace and Gromit had movies come before it. Curse the Were Rabbit comes, Shaun the Sheep comes after it, Timmy Time comes after it. It's a beloved franchise internationally. In America, it just doesn't have the traction. I think if we gave it the time of day and it debuted on half as many screens as his movie did, it never had a chance to get true traction in America. Shaun the Sheep's great, but Wallace and Gromit needs more love.
And time. All right. Jordan, over to you for the final closing minute when ready.
John himself has admitted that his movie is really not underrated in almost any sense of the word. He mentioned that internationally it is loved. Loved. If a movie is loved and wins the Oscar for Best Picture Animated, that doesn't make it underrated. Maybe underrated in a small niche market here in the U.S., sure. But that's such a weird small argument here. Yours is simply not underrated. You even mentioned that the view score is lower. If you have a smaller section of people that have seen it, your view score is lower than my view score, which is a way bigger pool, that's a bad sign because that shows that small aggregate all collectively agree that the movie's fine. My movie, I'm not saying blows it out of the water. It came out a few months after Despicable Me. So yeah, it got slightly swept under the rug because they're like, oh, we just saw a villain turn good. But unfortunately now, if you look back and you view it now and you go, oh, this movie's underrated, because I'm not going off of Despicable Me high or low. I'm going off just the movie itself that has heart, that is funny, that audiences I think are more finding here. And I would not be surprised in the next couple of years if it had a TV show or a sequel.
And time. All right. Guys, we're going to go ahead and wait, that's the wrong one. We'll go ahead and sit you guys in the back. Thank you. We'll go ahead and bring in the competitors. All right, so just a couple quick fact checks once again here. So in terms of Rotten Tomatoes, they were both correct on that. Wallace and Gromit has a 95% approval rating, a 79% audience approval rating. Megamind has a 72% critic approval rating and a 72% audience approval rating. While Megamind does have more audience rating views, 100, it's a rounded off number, 100,000 plus to 10,000 plus. Where on earth they decide where those numbers round off, I have no clue, but that is what it is. Technically, because there was a lot of technical in this match, Wallace and Gromit does have more critic reviews at 184 to 182. So not by much, but more people have seen and submitted a review for it. Despicable Me was released in July of 2010. Megamind was released in November of 2010. So Megamind did come out after it. And there was a few months in between. They weren't one right after the other. In terms of the director, yes, Nick Park and Steve Box were the co-directors of Wallace and Gromit: The Curse of the Were-Rabbit. For what it's worth, again, the average person, I would say, does not know who's literally animating movies unless they take the time to read the credits, in which case, God bless you for giving those people their due. However, Megamind was directed by Tom McGrath, a regular director over at DreamWorks. He directed all 3 Madagascar entries, as well as working on other films for the studio. So he's the person who directed that. And then in terms of franchising for these respective franchises, it's been said that Wallace and Gromit never got a sequel, more specifically because their deal ended with DreamWorks shortly after. Therein, the popularity of the spinoff Shaun the Sheep took off, and because they were no longer partnered with DreamWorks and they didn't have a budget to work with, they chose to pursue what was popular instead of continuing this franchise. In terms of Megamind, though no official reason has ever been given as to why a sequel wasn't made, because the movie did earn a profit for the studio. Not the biggest one, but it did earn a profit for the studio. It's believed that was because the film was produced during Guillermo del Toro's era at DreamWorks. For those who don't know, Guillermo del Toro had a 3 to 4 year period where he was at DreamWorks and was actively involved in developing films for the studio. He is one of the major reasons why Puss in Boots got made. He is one of the major reasons why the Kung Fu Panda got a trilogy. He came on right as Megamind was beginning production and served as a creative consultant to the film. He is the reason Rise of the Guardians got made. And for anyone who's a fan of the Troll Hunters Netflix series, despite the fact that his contract with DreamWorks ended before that show came out, he continued to work on it through its completion for them, as he was the one who pitched that to them. So it's believed that, like all the other films he helped develop that weren't given sequels, it was more so because he left the studio than anything else. Rise of the Guardians was also supposed to be a franchise for them. That never got a sequel despite turning a small profit. And Puss in Boots, of course, took over 11 years to see its sequel to completion, really only getting it because Illumination took over the studio, and Chris Meledandri, the head of Illumination and now DreamWorks, had a vested interest. So there is a pattern there. For what it's worth as well, Megamind is now actually getting a sequel technically. It's getting a show that's being developed at Peacock by the original writers of the film. And it's believed that they are in negotiations to bring back Will Ferrell and other cast members to be a part of the movie. I think that's a very vague way of saying Brad Pitt won't be a part of it, but I'm sure a number of them will, because they're not all that busy. With that said, Tato, I'm going to go up to you first, sir. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
This one, again, another tight fight, as this whole match has been. Great job, guys. I do have JPO here. Ultimately, he nailed the rating part, and an Oscar-winning 95% movie cannot be underrated, whereas he explained why his 72 should be 80s, 90s.
Okay, Alejandro, I'll go to you, sir. Who gets your vote?
Yeah, I agree. This was incredibly tight. That was that was a lot of fun. I actually, go figure, I went with John. I do think that JPO kind of shot himself in the foot by admitting that it is kind of a niche thing. That's kind of the definition of underrated. Not a whole lot of people know about it. And given the numbers, and I did look it up, the 10,000 audience reviews versus 100,000 reviews for Megamind. That's insanity, and I think that nails how Megamind is a perfectly rated movie. So I went with John.
All right, which means Noah will go over to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
Sometimes I really hate being a judge because it's so subjective a lot, and I feel like a shitty person when maybe I don't agree with someone's argument, or I hate it. I hate that feeling because I want to go objectively with whoever's better. That being said, there were two big bombs that were dropped in this debate. One, JPO saying your movie has an Oscar and has a 95% on Rotten Tomatoes. And then John being, well, I can't remember the exact phrasing, but basically Despicable Me basically took your premise and made it better, even though it came before. But then what I think was pivotal is JPO was able to turn that around on its head. And so because of that, I went JPO.
All right. With that said, competitors, thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and sit you in the back because your winner by a final score of 3-1, JPO Jordan Owens.
Sorry, I was
looking
yawning.
tired after that fight.
That was me coming off a yawn just now.
Jordan, a very, very solid win. A win that took a lot more time than it normally would, but you did get the win. How are you feeling?
Feeling good, man. I love John as a trivia player, as a person, as a father, as my father, as a spooner, as a debater. Some say I'm a math student. I'm not doing that joke, but no, it was a pleasure battling John. I appreciate you and your patience. I hope all is well. Looking forward to the future here. Maybe a tourney. We'll see. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, man. At 5-3, first off, this is the best your record's ever looked, and this is the best your tournament chances are ever going to look.
Yeah.
So how are you feeling about that, man? Right now, you could play another match beforehand. You risk where you land in the tournament, but at this point, you have solidified your stance in the tournament. So how are you feeling?
Nice. No, that's good. That's good to hear that. Definitely, I'll be in that tournament here. It's going to be a Sweet 16 and Elite 16. So, no matter who I face, I know it's going to be a tough one. I think I'm going to have to really bring my studying to that. That's definitely something I think I can spend a little more time on is the pregame study. And yeah, I look forward to it.
Absolutely. Good win, man. Best of luck to you with that. We will see you on the next one as we'll go ahead and hit you in the back and bring John in. John, yeah, man, it's a tough one to take two on the bounce like that, especially after such a big win against a competitor like Jeremy. So how are you feeling after that?
I mean, I still feel good. I'm just like JPO said, I love JPO too. He's a very tender lover. All that stuff that you want to know about another man is all true.
You guys can DM them directly for more details.
Yeah. So I've heard. I don't have any personal experience with that. But
on the streets,
yeah, from the streets. They call him Feather Daddy on the streets. I don't know if you knew that. But yeah, yeah, it's been like a kind of like a backslide for me, and like I think just like I was saying backstage to you, like maybe I'm just doing too much. Like I'm taking on a lot of stuff. I'm very busy. I'm pulled in a lot of different directions, so I'm gonna reassess my role here and whether I'm going to continue doing this. But I know it's been a great time whether I stay or I go. Like I've had a great time in Battlegrounds. I'd recommend it if to anybody out there who's watching. If you're thinking about joining, you should join. That's that. And yeah. Great judging, great debating, great hosting, great writing. Let's go.
Well, most of those were compliments to me, so I'll take it. John, of course, in terms of, because we are at that point now where we're starting to look at, in terms of, obviously, everyone at home is going to get sick of hearing about this because the uploads don't come till later in the year. But for the sake of my sanity, we're beginning the recording for the tournament rather early. You are at a place now where you could get the opportunity to play before that happens. Even if you don't, you may still find yourself with an opportunity to be in the tournament, depending on how everyone else's chances shake down. But with that said, I look forward to seeing how that goes down. And the next time we see you, I'm going to say the next time we see you, we don't know when that'll be, just based on availability concerns, but the door is always open, so we shall see when you walk in. Till then, sir, take care of yourself.
You as well.
Try not to stress too hard. We'll go ahead and put you in the back. Only stress out when you're screaming loud at your son's competitions. That is the only time you should ever be stressed, right?
Exactly. That is true.
All right. Sit you in the back, guys. As we will wrap this up, of course, I want to say thank you to our judges here tonight, Jake, Noah, and Alejandro. I want to say, of course, thank you to the judges who are here for the first time around as well. I struggled to remember the people who were just in this call with me, so I certainly don't remember those people at this moment, but that is not a degenerative statement against you. That is just my poor memory at this time of night. With that said, though, thank you guys for being here. Thank you to Jordan. Congratulations. Thank you to John for putting in the hard effort you always do. Thank you to all of you at home for watching. What did you guys think of the slight change in format? It was easier on me, but did you guys enjoy just watching a video and seeing the judges judge it? Be sure to drop a comment, respond to the channel, like, subscribe, and stick around for more Movie Battleground. With that said, my name is Aaron Knoll. We'll see you later. Take care.